Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
Yes, Mayor Burton, we have regrets from Councillor Khan.
Thank you. And Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Adams? No? Thank you. We have no consent items for this agenda. You have two confidential consent items. How do you wish to proceed with your confidential consent items? Councillor Johnston. Councillor Johnston moves them. Is there any, we can't have any discussion. So absent a desire to go into camera, I'll call the vote on those. All those in favor?
We need to go into committee now.
Oh, I skipped over that. Excuse me. Thank you. Maybe, why don't you come up here? Can I have a mover and seconder to resolve into committee of the whole? Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Elgar, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any. Now we're in committee of the whole. Now I'll take that motion from Councillor Johnston and I'll call the vote on the confidential consent items. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and those are carried. It's great working with a bunch of people who back you up, you know, and have your back. Now we come to our first of two public hearing items tonight. The first is the public meeting report for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the Coptic Orthodox Church at 1177 Invicta Drive. And if we turn our attention to Paul, he will summarize the report that's before us and we will ask the public for input. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. The town is in receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit the additional use of a private school within an existing place of worship. The subject property is located at the end of a cul-de-sac, municipally known as 1177 Invicta Drive. A place of worship and day nursery currently exist on the subject property. The property is located within an existing employment subdivision. There is one existing place of worship also located on Invicta Drive. I've attached a couple of elevation drawings which show the exterior of the building, what it would look like once it's complete. The applicant has submitted a site plan application which staff are currently reviewing, which staff are reviewing concurrently with the zoning bylaw amendment application. There's another image. The subject property is designated as business employment within the livable Oakville official plan. Section 7 of the official plan identifies location for community uses, which includes educational facilities. Educational facilities may be permitted within business employment designation, provided they are appropriately designed, buffered, or separated from other employment uses to prevent adverse impacts. Staff are reviewing the official plan conformity. The lands are zoned E1 employment. The private school use is currently not a permitted use within this E1 zone. In terms of next steps, staff will complete the analysis of the application and in the future bring a recommendation report to Planning and Development Council. In terms of recommendation for tonight, we're recommending that the comments from the public with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment application be received by the Coptic Orthodox Church. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Council, before we go to the public, do you have any questions for Paul? Councillor Adams.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation and the materials. We had a very good and healthy discussion, I think, at the public meeting where we did discuss the issues, particularly around the traffic impediments that might occur to neighbors on the street. I wanted to bring up one other issue, and that was the issue of impacts to existing businesses or future businesses in the area and the any further inability or pressure on businesses not to be able to expand as a result of there being a school in the area. Would you be able to speak to that or review that matter further? And one other question I had for you is, in the circulation of this material, were those businesses that are on North Service Road to the south of this location notified? Are they in the notification area?
Yes. To answer both questions, first, both the neighboring properties were notified, including the businesses to the south of this property. Secondly, in terms of impacts to future uses and current uses within Invicta Drive, staff will be considering matters such as traffic, compatibility in terms of buffering, site design, as it relates to this site as well as neighboring properties, so we will look at that.
Okay, so the one issue that I was a little bit concerned about was any odor issues that might occur from the waste processing location that's to the south of them, and that impact on a school site?
I believe through our review, as well as in conjunction with the region, we look at, I believe it's the D6 or D7 guidelines in terms of requirements for buffering of adjacent uses, so we will look at that.
Thank you very much.
Would you back up a couple of slides there? I guess on our agenda, it's page 5, that one there specifically with the that one there will do. Have you got on the bottom of that, you'll see the it's the configuration of the, I guess the ingress of Royal Windsor Drive onto the Queenie. It's basically a one-way bridge, and you can make a right-hand turn on. Do we have any kind of a final or future plans to pictures of where the flyover is going to be and the connection of Invicta North Service Road onto across utilizing that bridge, and then eventually collecting onto Cornwall and Chartwell? Because it's designed, this is only a partial design which we keep showing a picture of. I just wonder how the final design would look, and maybe it impact this application.
Sure, if I may defer to Darnell Lambert.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a plan for that, to make that a full interchange. That's something we don't have available this evening, but we can certainly bring it back or have it circulated around through to you.
I'd like to see it overlaid and take the impact of what we know what's going to happen. We don't know when, but we know the bridge is designed as more of a two-way bridge, a normal bridge, and whether in fact this would have any impact on Invicta Drive. You can see where Invicta Drive is in location to the new future change, and I also understand that intersection may connect onto Cross Avenue as well. So in that area is going to be a pretty busy intersection in the future, and whether that creates a problem for the church short term and long term.
Through you, Mr. Chair, every plan that I have seen that looks to make a full interchange there preserves the connection of Invicta Drive to the North Service Road. Whether it's a full interchange, that I guess some of the options we're looking at is whether the North Service Road connects to future Iroquois Shore Road or whether it flies underneath. Under either one of those options, we preserve the interchange connection of Invicta Drive to the North Service Road.
Well, I just don't want to build some properties and then have to turn around and expropriate them. I know the former mayor is sitting a couple of rows behind you, and we had unfortunately done that in the past because we approved buildings and then came along and then find we had to expropriate the same property we just recently approved because we had didn't indicate the potential when we issued the deal. And you can only do what you know now, and we do know that this is going to be a major intersection.
Absolutely, I can say we share the same interest.
Thank you, Darnell, for assuring us that there's no impact there. Commissioner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was going to add that when we report back on the recommendation report, which will be coming in the next few months, we can show you both the detailed design that has been worked out for the Royal Windsor Drive overpass over the QEW, as well as the EA work that's currently going on in the Midtown, so you can satisfy yourself that it's not precluding any of those options.
Thank you all. Anyone else? Madam Clerk, are there any registered delegations for this?
Yes, we have one registered delegation. It would be Ruhia Jokia. Sorry.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, it's Ruhia Jokyu. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm just here on behalf of O'Connor, McLeod and Hannah, which is, our client is 1177 Invicta Drive. And I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of what my clients are planning. And I do have a presentation. I'm just going to locate it. There it is.
Well, before you start,
Yes?
let me ask you to just wait 1 second. Are there any other members of the public here tonight with information for council on this item? Would you raise your hand if you are? Ma'am, please go ahead.
Okay. Yep, perfect. Yeah, I'm just going to, yeah, sorry. There it is, thank you. I couldn't see it, thank you. So I'm aware that you have a rather full agenda, so I'm going to keep my submissions pretty brief. As you're aware, the subject property is located at 1177 Invicta Drive, which is currently zoned for a place of worship and daycare. The property is currently used by the Coptic Christian Egyptian community, and it's a church hall for church services. Currently, there's a private school and church combination in Mississauga that's bursting at the seams, and a lot of the students are bused from the town of Oakville. So the local church would like to make a school available on this premises so that the students can be educated within their local community. The church is proposing to use the existing building, which you see here, and renovating the interior significantly so that an elementary school from kindergarten to grade 8 can be introduced. And you saw the elevations there. The class sizes will be about 18 students with a total of about 10 classrooms. A total of 11 staff are expected to attend this school. And it's anticipated that the total school population within the next 5 years will be about 150 students. Once renovated, the church facility will serve about 150 to 200 families within the Oakville area. Now, the site plan proposes to make improvements to the exterior and interior of the building, but like I said, the bulk of the renovations will be on the inside. My client is currently in consultation with town staff, as you heard, to ensure the compatibility of this property with the surrounding properties. The proposed school design has been designed in a manner to best interrelate with the surrounding uses and buffer any potential adverse impact, such as traffic and parking. And I'd just like to submit that the zoning bylaw amendments and site plan application are in conformity with the provincial policies and will not have any significant impacts on the traffic in the area. There was an in-depth traffic study conducted to ensure this, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any detailed questions about that. I submit that the proposed site has adequate parking, and it's designed to ensure a steady flow of traffic on the site, especially during the peak hours. The creation of this small local school within will support the local Coptic Orthodox Christian community and is compatible with the current use of the property and its surrounding properties. I have Mr. Nelson here as well, the planner for my client, in case you have any other questions, but I'd be happy to answer any of your questions right now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Adams has questions.
First of all, thank you very much, and I do appreciate the discussion that we had at the public meeting. It was a very healthy discussion. After that, was there any further discussion about the storm drainage through the property into the neighbors?
Yeah, I believe currently the town staff is discussing with my clients to ensure that that's taken care of. I can't speak to that any further because it is under discussions and we're negotiating the best treatment of that.
Very good, and are the neighbors involved in the discussion as well?
I can defer that to the planner. No, I don't, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I just want to make sure that any changes to the drainage is worked through with the neighbors as well, so we don't end up with any fallout issues that occur.
Yeah, your concern is noted.
Upstream or downstream kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much for attending and for providing your information.
Thank you.
All right. Council, I'll look for a recommendation. Councillor Adams.
I'll move receipt of the item as recommended by our staff.
Thank you, Councillor. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. That brings us to our second public meeting, and that is the 177-185 Cross Avenue 580 Argus Road proposal. If you'll give your attention to Tricia, she will summarize the application
Thank you, Mayor Burton. The purpose of this report is to introduce the planning application in conjunction with the required statutory public meeting. As noted by my report, there are no decisions to be made at this time, and the report is to be received by council. The proponent has submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to amend the zoning of the properties at 177 and 185 Cross Avenue and 580 Argus Road to permit a high-density mixed-use development within the existing zoning provisions. The subject lands are located just north of the GO station at the northwest corner of Cross Avenue and Argus Road. The total site is 1 hectare. There are existing commercial and office uses on the lands now. The surrounding land uses are as follows. To the north, there's commercial and an office building. To the east, retail commercial building. To the south, Cross Avenue, the Oakville GO and VIA stations, and to the west, commercial buildings. There's also an auto use that is located at 570 Argus Road, which is the little square that is right here. The proposed development includes a mixed-use condominium consisting of 552 residential units and 7,000 square meters of retail, commercial, and office space, within 4 towers placed on a 2-story podium. The 4 residential towers are proposed at various heights. The height of each tower shown in the table here includes the 2-story podium and the number of units accommodated by that tower. There's a combination of surface and underground parking proposed on the lands. The lands are currently designated urban center and urban core within the livable Oakville plan. The uses permitted within these designations include a wide range of retail and service commercial uses, including restaurants, offices, and residential uses. Entertainment facilities and hotels may also be permitted. Policies within the livable Oakville plan do not permit surface parking between buildings and the adjoining streets. However, consideration may be given to limited surface parking within these areas for the purpose of visitor or commercial uses. The subject lands are eligible for bonusing under the current policies in Section 20 of the livable Oakville plan. The height limits permitted under Schedule L2 for Midtown within the urban center, which is the lighter shade brown, is 6 to 12 stories. The limits permitted within the urban core, the darker brown, of the development proposal is 8 to 20 stories. Schedule L2 identifies lands that are eligible for bonusing, for increased height through bonusing without amendments to the livable Oakville plan. Additions to the maximum height will be subject to a Section 37 agreement with the applicant and will provide for the exchange of additional height for the provision of public benefits. On Schedule L3 of livable Oakville, there are 2 proposed roads conceptually shown on where the subject lands are, one being north-south and the other an east-west road. While the precise location of these roads has yet to be determined, it is important that a walkable framework of streets and blocks be created in the Midtown. The lands are currently zoned C3A, or commercial arterial, and the zoning permits a range of commercial uses, restaurants, and service stations on the subject lands. The applicant is proposing a special provision to permit the high-density mixed-use development within the current zoning, and would include special care and special needs as an addition to retail, commercial, office uses, and residential. A zoning bylaw amendment consistent with the direction of the mixed-use designations for the growth areas in livable Oakville and from in-zone should be considered for the subject lands. A public information meeting was held on December 19th. Specific matters that were brought to our attention related to traffic and road network capacity, impacts to the future development of adjacent lots, and the types of uses and potential tenants were also brought up. These issues are in addition to the matters that have been identified by staff to date. Conformity with the livable Oakville plan, zoning, implementation of Midtown goals and objectives related to livable Oakville plan and planning documents, including but not limited to Metrolink's Midtown Mobility Hub guidelines, Midtown Class EA, future road network, servicing, in-zone, architectural and urban design, parking, and bonusing. Also, there are a few issues including long-term integration of adjacent site, which is 570 Argus Road, the layout of the development, access locations and pedestrian network, and transit and paratransit supportive development. Next steps include staff and applicant to continue working together on furthering the development concept, the location of the local roads, and design of the project. The complete analysis of the application, comments received by the public will be considered during the review process and addressed in the recommendation report. Finally, the recommendation report to future Planning and Development Council meeting will be brought forward. Recommendation tonight is that comments from the public meeting with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment submitted by 915643 Ontario Inc. be received. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to see Midtown gathering interest. And I'll turn to Councillor Bird for questions.
At the public open house they had a schematic of the proposed buildings. Do you have that?
Elevation?
Yeah.
Yep.
There. Okay. Just give an idea what, this isn't the final suggestion, this is just what they're proposing?
This is what's been submitted so far.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bird, any other questions? All right, I'll look for a registered delegation, Madam Clerk? No? None? Any members of the public with information for council on this item, then? Seeing none, I'll look to council for a resolution. Councillor Giddings, thank you. Councillor Giddings moves receipt. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Trish, can I ask, is that illustration, is that available on our website?
Yes.
Thanks. All right, that brings us to our first discussion item, and that is the Downtown Oakville Heritage Conservation District report. And colleagues, this is, if you like, I don't think I over-described this. This is a historic item before you. And let us turn to Scott Hanna and bring us up to date.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of Town Council. I'm very pleased tonight to bring forward our final report and recommendation on the Downtown Heritage Conservation District. This is the conclusion of about a year and a half of effort and public input, and on behalf of our team, I'm very pleased with the final product. Before I get started with a very short presentation, I just want to acknowledge a few people involved in this process. First of all, our study team internally, which included Philip Wiersma, a landscape architect, and Kirk Biggar from our policy area, and especially Sue Shepard, who was the project heritage planner on this particular initiative. Sue, as you know, has put an awful lot of effort into this initiative, devoting hundreds of hours organizing meetings, reviewing and preparing reports, and ensuring that the lines of communication remained open. Without Sue's efforts, the momentum for this project would not have been maintained. Also in the audience tonight, we have one member from our consulting team, MHBC Planning, Mr. David Kooming, who along with Nick Bogart and Wendy Shearer should also be congratulated. They've been extremely professional, and their expertise and advice to us during this process were very much appreciated. And finally, I say this with all sincerity, I want to thank all the individuals who participated in this particular study process. This included attendance at numerous public meetings, focus group sessions, and all of the correspondence and phone calls we've received. The participants included property and business owners, professionals, residents, and others simply with an interest in heritage. The feedback we have received has made this a very good project. Tonight, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say on behalf of the team that this is really a celebration of heritage character of our downtown core. Obviously, its past, which is depicted on these images, its present, which are on these images, and of course, its future. The intent of the district plan and guidelines that you have in front of you this evening is really to ensure the wise management of physical change and development in order to conserve the unique character of the district and its component buildings and spaces. That's a direct quote from the district plan itself. This is not about stopping the clock, but it's about having an appropriate plan and guidelines in place to manage the change for the future, which is obviously going to happen. I don't intend to go through the district plan and guidelines in detail. Sue did a great job back in December when it was introduced at the public meeting. But what I want to take you through this evening is two things. Really, the modifications which have occurred since the public meeting and how staff has responded to the issues that were raised back in December. The first change you're going to see is there are two documents in front of you this evening, not one. The first is the district plan and guidelines that we are hoping you will approve this evening. The second is the municipal implementation document that describes potential actions that council could take in support of the implementation of the plan. As noted on the overhead and also in the report, these are broken down into three categories: planning tools, public realm, and process. And most of the suggestions I will indicate to council are ongoing, and they're in fact part of the future game plan for the Downtown Strategic Action Plan. So the staff report that you have in front of you provides an update on these initiatives. There are, however, two suggestions, which I'll get to in a second, where we are asking council to make a decision and provide direction as part of our final recommendation. So the one change that has occurred since December is that we had a request from the owner and operator of 217 Lakeshore, which is the Swiss Interiors, Carol Vespers, to be removed from the district. Initially, we had some reservations about this, but upon further review, we realized that although it is an older building, it is not recognized as a heritage resource. It's been highly altered and also connected with a property immediately to the east, which is a contemporary building at 221 Lakeshore. So staff have agreed to remove that particular property, and that has support from your Heritage Committee. So the final boundary that you have in front of you, this is what it looks like in your report, does not include that property. The second issue I wanted to talk about briefly this evening was the input we had received from the statutory public meeting. And if you remember, there were several questions raised by Mr. Ray Foley about the definition of immediate vicinity, and also the request for consideration of a second Heritage Oakville Committee to oversee the downtown district. So, in terms of defining immediate vicinity, the first thing I wanted to mention was that the provincial policy statement and your own Livable Oakville official plan requires the completion of a cultural heritage impact assessment where development is taking place adjacent to or, quote, in the immediate vicinity of a designated heritage resource, in this case the downtown district. So there is also the requirement for that completion of what is known as a cultural heritage impact assessment. The problem being is there's no definition of what immediate vicinity means. So during our focus group sessions, we had heard from a lot of the participants that they had suggested that council actually define what that would mean. In your report this evening, there is a recommendation that that particular immediate vicinity be defined as 40 meters, which would be roughly the equivalent of a 20-meter road allowance plus a lot depth, another 20-meter lot depth in the area. So again, the majority of the participants in our focus group meetings were suggesting that that take place. So this would be a map of what that immediate vicinity would look like. And the one thing that I would note is around the majority of the district, that blue line is what we call the buffered or the immediate vicinity. It does not include the road stubs that have been included in the district. So you'll see in our final definition that immediate vicinity only includes properties that are within the designated district, but not the road stubs. So the eastern end of Lakeshore Road would be a good example of that. So properties east of Dunn Street would not be included in that definition. The second request was that there be a separate Downtown Oakville Heritage Advisory Committee that would deal with this particular district that's being recommended. You'll note by the report that staff are not supporting that new committee. In fact, the current Heritage Oakville Committee, in my mind, already deals with non-residential properties, which are designated in a very, very good fashion. But staff do see merits in a part of this recommendation, and that's to support representation from business and commercial property owners on the committee in future. We do recognize that there are unique challenges faced by business owners and commercial property owners, and thus the need to, council should consider appointing them to the committee in future. So in conclusion, and to wrap up, these statements really, I think, provide the summary of where we're at. You have in front of you a recommended Heritage Conservation District for downtown, which recognizes the collection of property, streetscapes, and landscapes as an important heritage resource. In our mind, as a study team, we believe that the district will strengthen the town's identity and distinctiveness. As I mentioned before, it will manage change in a consistent manner while retaining and conserving cultural heritage resources. And it is the result of over a year of community consultation, and I believe fully supported by the majority of Oakville residents. So the recommendation in front of you is four-part. The first two are to adopt the bylaw to designate the Conservation District under Section 41. Under that same bylaw, to adopt the plan and guidelines under Section 42 of the Act. And the third and fourth deal with that specific direction we're hoping to receive from Council about the immediate vicinity. And also number 4, that Council consider appointing representation from the business and commercial property owners to Heritage Oakville when filling vacancies to the committee. You'll notice in the report initially we had recommended that those appointments occur when the Council does its update to its terms of reference for the committee, but we were pointed out quite wisely by our Clerk's Department that in fact we might have to wait until the next term of council for that to occur. And this, from time to time, you do get vacancies on your Heritage Oakville Committee, and a quicker way of appointing representation from business and commercial property owners would be via that fourth resolution. So Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Councillor Bird and Councillor Giddings.
Yeah, on the number 4, in the past, maybe the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, used to have in the old LACAC we had before, used to have a representative of the downtown BIA, which were representative appointed to that committee. We've got rid of LACAC, so there obviously is no appointment. Would that be an alternative, have the BIA appoint one of their members? Presumably they represent the entire business community, and they report back to that board as to get some input, no different than I think we have Residents Association representatives to the Heritage. Is that an alternative?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make that at the appointed time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for you and your team's efforts. I know it's been exhaustive, and the public input component was second to none in terms of the meeting, so I'd like to thank you and your team for that. I'm thrilled to see that there'll be provision for a member from the downtown business community sit on the Heritage Committee. Question in terms of the compliance for heritage buildings under the AODA. I know that's a ways down the road. Are you able to provide any sort of sense in terms of, is that a decade away or 5 years, just in terms of being able to provide for accessibility for those with disabilities?
Through your worship to Councillor Giddings, 2 comments on that. We did provide a section in the final plan and guidelines which dealt with accessibility, so we've tried to capture that right up front. As far as the timing of when those changes would take place, I'm probably not the right person to answer that question, but I know in the next several years I believe it will be coming down the pipe.
All right, thank you. For those, I know you covered it previously, the previous meeting. In terms of the, there was rich discussion in terms of the eastern boundary. Large public sentiment that it should be, that we've missed the boat, that it should go over to Allen Street. For those that are late to the process, could you just briefly describe the process behind our current boundary?
The one way I would describe that, Councillor Giddings, is that in order to I would say, pass the test to be recognized as a conservation district, you really had to have 4 tests being met, and one of them was the concentration of heritage resources. It's actually set out in the plan. But when we got together between the study team and our consulting team, and we looked at the eastern end of Lakeshore as an example, there clearly are heritage resources there, but it wasn't meeting the tests that are required in order for us in good conscience to recommend to you that we create a district. So some of those properties are still on the list. Some of them are in fact designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act and will continue to be protected over time. But it wasn't to the same extent that we could say it should be part of the district.
All right, thank you. And last question, in terms of the anthropology building, the old bank building on the north side there, is that the type of project that we could expect to see, or that we would be encouraged in terms of introducing modern form while preserving and honoring past buildings?
Yes, Councillor Getting, that's actually a very good example. One of the slides I went through rather quickly actually was a photograph of that building, and it mirrors it respects the heritage of the original building and also allows for contemporary construction, and that's what our plan and guidelines have set out to do.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Others? Are there members of the public with information for council on this item? If not, then I'd like to take the opportunity to say 2 things. First, on behalf of the BIA, which I sit on the board of, nothing in number 4 as it's written now would prevent a member of the BIA board being appointed, but the BIA hasn't been asked about it, so I would yet, and although I don't anticipate any refusal, I thought maybe we would just leave it as it is for now and ask them and proceed accordingly, rather than getting too specific before we have specific information. So that's just a thought for your consideration. And then the second thing that I wanted to say with a great deal of pleasure is I want to say thank you to His Worship, former Mayor Harry Barrett, who's joined us tonight. Mayor Barrett has been our inspiration and our instigator on so many things heritage in Oakville for so many years that I can't let this historic moment pass without acknowledging his great contribution. And I certainly hope, and I do believe from his refusing to say anything, I do believe that this meets with some approval with your worship. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Bird, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, and it's as presented with number 4, that council requests the downtown BIA appoint a representative from their organization to the Oakville the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee. I guess we're going to call it keep it the same name. Just add an extra body.
So
it's just request.
Right, I understand. Now, because council actually makes the appointment, perhaps I could do a little out loud wordsmithing with you. And council request the downtown Oakville BIA to provide a nominee for the for council to for the committee. Just to respect the fact that council actually makes the appointment.
Well, yeah, I was just trying to follow as close as possible to the manner we used to have representatives on LACAC, which was the forerunner of Heritage Oakville, and believe me, the downtown BIA did have an appointee from the board on that committee.
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the reasons why the terms of reference was changed was because in a lot of instances where there was a requirement for a particular group to have a member, there may not have been a member coming forward.
Right.
So when you limit it to one member, then you actually preclude that seat from being filled on the committee. So perhaps I could suggest that you leave the beginning part of the recommendation as it is and add to the end that council request or make a request to the BIA to consider, as the mayor had said, putting someone into the nomination.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor?
Whatever serves the purpose, I just wanted to get them engaged, and Councillor Gooding, or Gooding, well, it goes back,
Whatever you'd like.
you mentioned this as a historic event. It is also for me as well. I must say that I wasn't there. This will be Heritage District number 4. This is all Heritage District, the third one that I've been involved in, and Harry's been involved in all of them, including this one. And this started off, bringing back to the BIA, the BIA had one of the first meetings at the request of some of the businesses. In the restaurant, quite frankly, that we had a reception for former Mayor Barrett, his birthday party a few months ago. The first question out of some of the people that were there, who you know about, I think you've alluded to some of the names this evening in your presentation, was what does the downtown BIA represent? Do you represent the business owners, the property owners, the retailers? What do you represent? And that kind of threw them off a little bit. Like they're running a business, they have what they perceived a lot of skin in the game, either owning businesses or trying to operate business, so a real vested interest in the success of this project. So quite frankly, I was hoping that this would engage them in that process going forward, and we can get over that fear factor. And I mentioned this is number 3 for me. The first 2 was a little problematic. It was 3 wanted to get in. That was the one from 2nd Street over. They appealed to us to get in. That was number 2. And that was the years that I was on hiatus from council, so I missed that one. But the other one's number 3. They actually raised the money did their own study to try to get in the deal. And this one here is the first time we've tried to engage the commercial aspect. So it's going to have some particular challenges. And it struck me that first meeting when they said the business want to be involved, that we should get them involved going forward, not long-term and obviously get over the short-term hump as well, because their success is going to be our success. And at the end of the day, I don't want to just preserve a bunch of derelict, empty buildings. We've got enough of those around town. I want this thing to be, and you pointed out, Councillor Giddings, one of the success that it can work. And it works in other places. It works down in Niagara Lake, and I can't believe why it can't work here as well. So with that, I would hope that, I know we don't get a recorded vote at this stage, but I'd hope we could wordsmith something, including item number 4, that when we come out of council, that I have a recorded vote, and I would like to see it be unanimous.
Well, I have good news for you, Councillor. Thanks to Councillor Elgar, you can now have a recorded vote.
Yeah, that's true. This was the last council meeting. We did actually change the procedural bylaws. So if we don't have to go out to have a recorded vote, we can have it at your pleasure, Your Worship.
That's right. It's now yours. So does anyone need me to put the motion before you again? Everybody understood it? All right then. Please rise to be named if you're voting in favor. Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Bird, Councillor DeMoff, Councillor Duddeck, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. That looks pretty unanimous to me. I won't call a negative vote. Thank you one and all, and Your Worship, thank you very much for being here. We may come back to you in the rest of the meeting. I understand there may be other matters for you here. All right, that brings us now to the next event on our agenda, and this too has a kind of weighty historic significance because this is a community improvement plan, and we don't do those every day either. And if you'll give your attention now to Kirk Biggar, he will summarize the report before you for the benefit of the public and yourselves. Kirk?
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. Good evening. The next topic is community improvement planning in Oakville. It's item number 4, page 177 in the agenda. Just a quick overview of what community improvement planning is in the first few slides. It's a specialized tool in the Planning Act to be undertaken at the municipal level
to help to implement municipal official plans. It basically means the maintenance, rehabilitation, development, and redevelopment of the built environment. Community improvement plans, also known as CIPs, use programs and activities, including financial incentives, to help implement a municipality's vision for land use change. CIPs may be used to revitalize areas in transition, to focus on specific issues like growth management and intensification, and to coordinate the development of livable urban environments. So in order to undertake a CIP, the local official plan needs enabling policies, and those are found in the Livable Oakville Plan under Part F, which is our implementation and interpretation section. The plan also directs that a community improvement plan shall be prepared for areas within Kerr Village and Bronte Village. And previously, Council has considered community improvement planning on a number of occasions, including the process to develop the Livable Oakville Plan. In terms of the power to undertake community improvement planning, it's found in the Planning Act and in the Municipal Act. In 2006, the Planning Act was amended to create some new definitions around community improvement, to identify the types of studies and the types of costs that would be eligible for funding through a CIP. It also gave permissions for upper tier and lower tier municipalities to participate in each other's CIPs through funding and loans, grants and loans, and vice versa. It also gave permission to municipalities to buy and sell land and buildings or to undertake improvements to those lands and buildings. Authority was also granted to the local municipalities to adopt their own community improvement plans without seeking formal approval from the Municipal Affairs and Housing. However, municipalities are still required to consult with that ministry as they undertake a CIP. With respect to the Municipal Act, it prohibits bonusing to the private sector. However, activities such as loans and grants undertaken under a CIP are exempt from that prohibition. The basic premise for the prohibition is, in law, to permit an exemption, you need to show that something needs fixing. Just briefly, there are, as I mentioned earlier to one of the ward councillors, there are about 1,000 flavors of community improvement plans out there. They can have a narrow, singular focus, or they can combine a number of programs and activities into a broad scope. They might cover an entire municipal jurisdiction, or they might be confined to a very specific geographic area. It's also possible for one municipality to have a number of community improvement plans in place, each of them focused on different issues. With all this variety still, there are two main types that are described. Those that have municipally driven programs that focus on the public realm and on community infrastructure, and those that are incentive-based programs that provide assistance to the private realm, financial assistance, and incentives. Community improvement planning can lead to more effective town building, and that has many benefits, which include the transition of former commercial or industrial lands to vibrant mixed-use areas, the restoration of historic buildings and upgrades to building facades. It can increase the taxes paid to the municipality as well as the property assessment. It can encourage economic development and new business investment. It can also create new employment and increase tourism. As we were undertaking our research for this work, we reviewed a number of case studies from municipalities in Ontario, in terms of their common features and practices. That cold finally caught up with me. We also met with the City of Hamilton. They have a number of programs in place. They have over 8 CIP types in place. They provide loans and grants for housing, office, commercial development, tax increment grants, and cultural heritage preservation. Hamilton staff also provided a number of details and funding and financial information that they actually report regularly to their council on. They shared some of their successes and some of their failures with us. One of their successes was the multi-residential community improvement plan. It uses low-interest loans to promote residential development in downtown areas. To date, 747 units have been built at a cost of only $2.6 million to the city. This in turn generated a construction value of $84.8 million. leveraging power of 1 to 33, which means, in other words, for every dollar invested by the municipality, $33 worth of construction value is generated. So leveraging power is an important feature of CIPs. Let's take a moment. I've got a mint going too. Thank you very much. We had one of these in Bronte Village once, one meeting. It was more of a struggle than this. So in terms of Oakville opportunities, and these are identified in the staff report, there's several areas where staff believe that this type of program would be effective. Main Street revitalization, for example, at downtown Kerr, Bronte, and downtown Oakville. Could look at cultural heritage conservation town-wide. You could look at growth and intensification in Oakville's emerging growth areas, where we might look at incentives to promote mixed-use development to create livable urban environments. Also, brownfield remediation, which is not a big problem in Oakville because of our history of industrialization, but it's certainly an issue in some areas, and it could be used in these situations. Depending on the area of focus and the types of changes desired, both municipally driven and incentive-based CIPs could be used for these programs. Based on staff research and a view of the needs, we feel a short-term, small-scale pilot CIP focused on Main Street revitalization would be appropriate. This type of program would minimize financial risks. It would help to refine our administrative capabilities and roles. It would also lead the way to new partnerships with the private sector. We're thinking that a facade improvement CIP meets these criteria. And what's special about a facade improvement program, it provides instant improvement to the Main Street. It generates tangible public realm benefits and can be short duration and require small capital. Almost there. And so the other opinion, I guess, of staff at this time is that Kerr Village is best suited for this type of program. There's a prevalence of stable buildings and facades. The benefits generated there will last quite a while. In terms of the planning component that could be undertaken, that could happen in the spring of this year. It would consist of community engagement, research, refining the program, developing the program in terms of eligibility, the type of design support that staff could provide, and the controls the municipality would have. The budgeting component, which would identify funding, the financial controls, could happen in the summer and the fall, and could be introduced into the 2014 annual budget cycle. If successful, this type of program could be replicated in Bronte Village. But what we want to see in Bronte happen first, there's a couple of key initiatives underway there that we'd like to see have a chance of their own success. The first one for Bronte Village is the development of the new growth area policies in the Livable Oakville plan. And the second one is the Bronte Business Action Plan. And that's a new plan that's been developed with the help of staff and the BIA and other members of the community. And it's based on the 4-pillar Main Street program. And the priority one is to organize and to really develop a communications and a committee program for the BIA in Bronte. Priority 2 is to focus on marketing and events and promotions for Bronte Village. And then priority 3 is on design, parking, streetscape, and that's where something like a community improvement plan might find its way into Bronte Village later on once the action plan has taken a few steps forward. The final stage in that plan is for economic development and really focusing the businesses in Bronte Village. And so finally, and thank you for bearing with me, the recommendation before you tonight is to receive the report, to direct staff to prepare a pilot community improvement plan for Kerr Village as detailed in the staff report, and then thirdly, to bring the request for funding and related financial administrative matters to the town's budget process. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Biggar, for struggling through that.
Sorry,
soldier. Councillor Duddeck.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work in this regard. I just have a few questions. First, when I looked at the report and I was sort of surveying the background, there was no mention of the Kerr revitalization report, the original one that sort of kicked it off. And I know in that report there was reference to a community improvement plan. In fact, some people were under the misunderstanding that we already had one in Kerr, and it wasn't until planning staff explained, no, we needed to create one, hence this report. So is there any reason why that wouldn't have been referenced, or is that far back that...
No, I think that's really good work. It was a different time and place.
Okay.
As we've explained, and that's the sort of thing we would pick up again through this next planning process. A lot of those ideas also were incorporated into the Kerr Village revitalization plan that became the Livable Oakville plan component for Kerr Village.
I was wondering whether or not that sort of dovetailed into the one that we had done, and so therefore it was sort of morphed into it, but I just didn't want to lose sight of it. The other thing is in regards to the taxation. I think on page 194 you make reference to, for instance, or is it, no, sorry, is it 194? I may have the wrong one. Yeah, it is, the tax increment equivalent grant. Given the, and I don't know about downtown or Bronte, but I'm pretty sure they're of a like mind, we've had quite a lot of our business owners very concerned at the last round of assessments they've received from MPAC. And as a result, it's created considerable angst regarding the fact we may be entering into a case where businesses may have to go under just because of the taxation and the sort of discrepancy of what they could actually get for their business nowadays. Is there any mechanism whereby there's any incentive that way for a business to, like I noticed the one where it said future costs, and it said if you could realize money coming in and putting money into something that you could sort of capture money that way. But is there any mechanism through a community improvement plan to, I don't want to say forgive, but adjust taxation if a particular area is struggling?
I believe you can provide tax relief through CIPs. You can forgive educational taxes is one tool that we've seen used in other places. So you can provide that type of relief. The tax increment equivalent grant is actually dealing with increased assessment, so.
That's why I was sort of confused as to. The other one to me was future, right, wasn't it?
Right.
And the other one I was thinking more was current day and dealing with the reality of maybe an economic downturn and that people were struggling, you know.
So that's a great point. I think what we're aiming to do next in Kerr Village and also in Bronte is to begin that consultation piece and to have that engagement with the people in the field, the people on the street, and really get to the heart of the matter of what their issues are. We've provided a direction for a very narrow scope, which is only going to achieve so much. A lot of good things can come from that, but not everything. And so we'll be able to develop those relationships and move forward with maybe tackling new problems in different ways in the future.
The other is the specific area has not been decided. That goes through the consultation process. Is that correct in terms of the geographic boundaries? And so it may not necessarily be identical to the BIA, but it may be sort of a variation thereof. Is that correct?
That is correct. We undertook some very high-level analysis of the area that included the BIA district, the growth area district, but also the lower part of Kerr, which is along Lakeshore, which is outside of the growth area, but still part of the Main Street in a sense. So that there could be priority areas identified, and you phase it in over time. It could be all of them. I think we had 250 storefronts identified in that whole area.
And I'm also thinking in terms, I know further along in the report, there's reference to Spears Road as being an area of study in the future. I'm thinking, is that something whereby we might incorporate some work for the northern end of the Kerr BIA, given that we've been struggling with, we've got the Empire Communities going in there, but there's that one block that's going to be going through a considerable, I anticipate, renewal process, and we may want to be proactive in regards to, putting steps in place for that, to secure streetscaping funding, that sort of thing.
So there are a couple matters you're referring to there. Like with Empire, we want to use the development application process to get the right streetscape, the buildings in the right places, the right types of design and layout. But there might be, if we don't see that vision being realized in terms of we're not getting any activity on that site, then we might look at a type of CIP that would incent mixed-use development. The report refers to where that might happen in Midtown as well, or Uptown, that sort of thing.
I'm glad you zeroed in on the lakeshore area because, and I guess that's where we have a bit of concern from the BIA standpoint in the Kerr Village. We've been wanting to have some streetscaping done in the aspect of improved street lighting along that lakeshore corridor to make it more sympathetic to what the business improvement area has currently in place. Is that something we should be holding off from doing in anticipation of there may be funds available or mechanisms whereby we can get additional funding for that? Because I'm just worried about the timing of putting it off versus it becoming a reality.
So again, what we're talking about tonight is very specifically focused on the fronts of buildings, not necessarily with the lighting that is occurring in the right-of-way. We've used actually formerly a CIP to provide for streetscaping when we were able to get money through other means from the province to provide for that type of revitalization, and that was more of the municipally driven CIP, not the incentive-based one. There may be other opportunities out there for us to channel some funding into streetscape improvements. We didn't look at that specifically here.
So just to confirm, and I'm thankful for that, we're looking at just a facade improvement CIP at this point for the Kerr area versus some of the areas that you referenced in your report of what a CIP could do. But staff's recommendation was the facade improvement is the one. What if through the process the BIA were to provide a sufficient argument or documentation per se that a certain thing outside that facade improvement might be a benefit, whether it be I know there's been considerable discussions regarding, what's the word I'm looking for, at the beginning of entrance to a...
Gateway.
Gateway, thank you, right. Big words. Gateway either at the north end or at the south. Is that something that we should maybe make application to or discussions with staff that you'd come back with another recommendation for that? Or can it have an opportunity to be included in this? Or are we just dealing with facade? I just don't want to have false expectations when we have those discussions.
Okay, so again, tonight we've intentionally kept it very narrow to keep it simple and as a pilot basis. But we're going to have these discussions, so we're going to generate some ideas, and we can figure out through that the best way to address those other concerns or other great ideas. A gateway in the north might come from development adjacent, which would be separate again from a CIP, but might be an opportunity that comes along that we can use.
Oh, Commissioner. I was trying to decide which councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the one thing I wanted to clarify is the funding for the program is almost entirely municipally driven. So there are no provincial or federal funding. There used to be provincial and federal funding through the neighborhood improvement plan that helped fund a lot of the community improvement. All of that has gone away. So this is really looking at what are the opportunities municipally for us to use that legislation to move forward. And that's why I think specifically we've kept it to a small program looking at the facades to build that expertise and see how we can grow it from there.
So that's a useful point of clarification. So it needs to be understood that this is general tax money, not Santa Claus.
And I appreciate the clarification because From the previous discussions we had had through the original Kerr revitalization, there was reference to provincial and federal funding, and hence the clarification assists.
Glad you did that. Councillor DeMoff, were you next? Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, Councillor Duddeck, the Bronte BIA is equally concerned about this MPAC issue, and I would just like to publicly thank the Kerr Street BIA for organizing and initiating a get-together. I just forget when it is, but it's coming up, it's tomorrow. It's coming up soon for the property owners in both the respective BIAs to get information on this MPAC issue that's so concerning. And the issue of the economic development piece that you referred to is moving along in Bronte quite well. Thank you very much. And thank you for the town's economic development department's leadership on this. The only question I have is, when you and I chatted about this earlier, I thought you made some reference to the potential, the possibility, and the importance of events taking place within the two BIAs, and I would like you to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Okay, so that was when we were discussing earlier this afternoon. I was trying to provide a little bit more background around the Bronte Business Action Plan, and there are 4 clear priorities established in that plan.
Yeah.
The first priority is the organizational piece. Get the BIA working together as a team, develop some committees, start to refine the identity and the communication strategy. Second phase is to look at building the profile of the district, of the area. So that would be through events, through marketing and promotions, advertising. And so BIAs typically use events to raise their profile. Bronte Village does a lot of that already, and they would be looking to do some more of those in the future as part of that second priority. So then the third one was to, I'm just blanking for a minute here. The third one was to begin to look at, pardon me, design, which is where you would look at issues like streetscape and lighting and that sort of thing, and you might be able to use a community improvement plan to address some of those issues. And then the fourth priority in the action plan is the economic development piece.
Thank you, sir, for a great report.
Welcome.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. I do see a hand over here. Councillor Adams.
Thank you for the discussion, and I wanted to thank Councillor Duddeck for her work on this. It goes back, I know, several terms now that you've been working on Kerr Street, so I know it's a long and fraught with danger path, but well done. And I just wanted to ask our staff, when it comes back and we're talking about the financing piece, we've had some good discussion about what does it mean and how does it get funded and all that kind of thing. When it comes down to us making a decision about what to do and not to do, will we have lots of different options provided to us? So we've got a range of everything from 0 and up sort of thing.
Yes.
Presumably there are some things that we can do that don't require direct funding, and there are other things that obviously do. So we'll have that full slate available?
That's correct.
Thank you.
No, we're going to cheat you.
Sorry, my budget hat comes on once in a while.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Biggar. Who wants to give us a motion?
Can I ask one question? We did, maybe Councillor Robinson can help me on this. I can remember former Councillor Barron's coming forward and asking for some money to do with a storefront facade or window study in Bronte, and there was a discussion on whatever, but I think it was about $6,000 or $7,000 a number of years ago. Whatever happened to that? Did anybody do? Is it sitting on a shelf somewhere?
Probably like most of the other studies that you and I are familiar with that were done down there. That's my best answer. It wasn't expensive, but it didn't do much.
Because it's very close to Groundhog Day, and I know, because I can I was going through my basement and getting rid of those little certificates you hand out once a year, and things for pictures of people for doing things, and I can remember one of the ones I had that I wasn't even on council at the time, but it was the Kerr Street Business Improvement area, that before we had Privilege Association, but there was a Kerr Street study. I was on this committee as a citizen at that time, before I was on council, so you know how long ago it was. And that was putting up with the 3 pods that we were talking about here tonight, the center pod, the north pod, and thing, because that was the problem with Kerr Street. There's 3 sort of distinct, and how could we can join those things together? But that's got to be, I guess, 40 years ago. And other than fast forward 30 some odd years, Fred Oliver comes on and Cathy and come up with the improvement. So these 2 things do take time. I mean, but if we're going to do things, and I don't want to throw out the idea that we're talking about, that there's going to be an awful lot of public money sitting there ready to make this thing happen. Because quite frankly, in the last few things, there was no money other than putting on the Kerr Street Wine and Cheese Festival, I think it was, or Wine Festival, and that was $1,500. That's the end of the day. We had a lot of fun. We had a good idea and a plan, but it ran out without any funding. And you have to have some commitment, as I see in the CAP, from the property owners. They have to drive it as well, and better to put up they're doing the improvements. We can help them. But I think it was always backwards in the past. We would do the study, and we would have it sit on the shelf until somebody took it out and actually spent some money, and it had to be private money rather than public money. So I hope we're not coming up with a new thing. On the other hand, if we're going to play tax rates, presumably the tax shift from one area in town, retail or whatever it is, has to be picked up. It's not going to go to residential. It's going to stay within the tax code, is it? So we can charge malls for retailers in malls to support retailers not in malls? Is that the sort of... No, I didn't think so. I just see this thing, every once in a while we get kind of excited, but then at the end of the day, you need something to drive it, and it's normally the private sector has to drive this thing, and if it's not there, it's not going to go anywhere other than be back on the shelf.
Thank you, Councillor Bird, for the deepest reach back into history on this historic evening. Who would like to give us a motion? Councillor Duddeck?
On behalf of Councillor Demoff and myself, we'd be pleased to have this moved. Thank you. And thank staff very much for all their hard work. And we look forward to continuing that work and going forward.
All right. Is council willing to have a recorded vote on this? Please rise to be named if you're in favor of it. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Call the delegation.
We don't have any.
You don't have one.
Maybe.
Will someone delegate? Are there any members of the public with information for council on this item? Yes, I will. There you go.
Okay, got it.
Is this thumbs up or thumbs down?
This is 2 thumbs up. As a member of the Kerr Street community for the past 13, 14 years, it's refreshing, and I thank staff report in return for the investment once again in the Kerr Village area, and I look forward to part of the committees and the breakdown. And I think there is some opportunities to address some private and public funding on this. I understand that our committee, the Commissioner of Planning, said there is no funding available provincially or federally. We'll look into seeing whether or not those opportunities do exist. And I heard what Councillor Adams suggested. It's not all fair that our taxpayers look after some of the infrastructure and services and streetscaping we're looking at. Perhaps through these conversations and through these consulting methods, we can look forward to enhancing or maybe looking at different areas where there could be both private and public funding through the CIPs. So on behalf of the Kerr Village BIA, I thank council and staff and look forward to the next steps.
Mr. Messer, thank you. Those are very good remarks, and I appreciate them very much.
Thank you.
All right, Council. It's moved by Councillor Duddeck, and I would ask you to rise to be named if you want to support it. Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Laffworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Bird, Councillor Demoff, Councillor Duddeck, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. Thank you very much. I declare that passed. Now that will bring us to item number 5, the provincial planning initiatives. And the one change I would suggest, oh, here, we have a new one anyway, I think. Good. Pardon? You do have a handout. Right. So, Council, you have a handout on your desk updating you on this file. And if you turn your attention to Diane Childs, she will update you and provide you with a revised recommendation than the one in your agenda tonight. That's right, isn't it?
Yep.
Good, perfect, thanks.
Good evening. The report before you tonight, Provincial Planning Initiatives, is item 5, and it's found on page 201 of your agenda. In the past few months, the province has released a number of proposed updates to provincial policies for public consultation and comment. The 5-year review of the provincial policy statement, proposed amendment 2 to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and an initiative to further grow the Greenbelt have all been released since September 2012. Generally, Oakville comments on provincial planning initiatives are through a joint submission by the Halton Area Planning Partnership Committee, or HAP as we like to call it. At HAP, we use a 3-phased approach. Firstly, each municipality completes an independent review. Phase 2 consists of a roundtable discussion with HAP committee members to discuss all comments collectively and identify common themes to develop a set of draft policy recommendations. And then finally, we finalize the policy recommendations with supporting justification in the submission with sign-off from all Halton municipalities' planning directors. The 5-year review of the provincial policy statement was initiated in March 2010. In October 2010, a joint submission from HAP was prepared and submitted to the province for input. The comments raised from the 2010 joint submission have generally been addressed. However, there are still some inconsistencies in the structure and language of the draft policies, as well as how they align with the policies for the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Key components of the HAP submission for the 5-year review of the PPS is a request for consistency and harmonization in terms of policy throughout all provincial plans and acts, support for the strengthened policy direction in regard to the development of a natural heritage system in the province, concerns with newly introduced terms being too vague, broad, and open to interpretation, some of the vagueness of the responsibilities of municipalities with respect to engaging First Nations communities, and finally, support for enabling municipalities to plan for infrastructure and public service facilities beyond a 20-year time horizon. The growth plan, no, growing the Greenbelt's next. In November 2012, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing announced it was proposing an amendment to the Greenbelt plan that would add provincially owned lands of approximately 255 hectares, which are part of the Glenarchy conservation area in the town, to the protected countryside area of the Greenbelt plan, and add a new urban river valley designation to the Greenbelt plan to facilitate adding publicly owned lands in urban river valleys currently outside of the Greenbelt. Staff has looked at growing the Greenbelt in 2011 through a report to Planning Committee. The report concluded that while there are definite merit for maximizing protection of natural environmental areas, the existing policy framework in the Greenbelt plan was not suited for the urban area. Council also considered the proposed amendment and in response passed a resolution on November 19, 2012 that reiterated the town's earlier position on the matter and provided support for the province's initiative in principle. The resolution also stipulated that any new policies for an urban river valley designation should be reflective of Oakville's policies, which are more restrictive than the Greenbelt plan, and Glenarchy could be included provided that Oakville policy intent was maintained. Now we're on the growth plan, Amendment 2. On November 2nd, 2012, the province released proposed Amendment 2 to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Proposed Amendment 2 contains policies that relate to population and employment forecasts for upper and single-tier municipalities in the Greater Golden Horseshoe to 2041. Feedback on proposed Amendment 2 is requested to be received to the province by February 8th. The province then has the ability to make any updates to the amendment prior to be submitted to Lieutenant Government for approval. A copy of the finalized HAP submission was forwarded to Council by memo for you this evening. HAP joint submission did not support the amendment being proposed as it only addresses the population and employment forecasts in Schedule 3 of the growth plan and does not update the policies relating to accommodating the proposed forecasts beyond 2031. Concerns identified include population and employment forecasts should reflect the 2011 census information. Major reviews should be in sync, giving municipalities a chance to conform and avoid continuous review treadmill. And municipality conformity amendments should be sheltered from appeals. And province needs to acknowledge role in ensuring required infrastructure is going to be in place to support the proposed growth. The original recommendation in the staff report is just to receive it, but we are proposing a revised recommendation, as I think you have before you this evening. Would you like me to read it? Everybody has it?
For the public, you might explain
Okay.
at least the intent.
Sure. The intent for doing this is to show council's endorsing the two joint submissions that were recently completed by HAP. The growth plan, the provincial policy one, although it was completed in 2012, the growth plan one has just been recently completed, and I think this strengthens our position going forward to the province.
Thank you. So you want to, whatever weight we could add.
Okay, the revised recommendation would be that the recommendations in the HAP joint submissions on the provincial policy statement review draft policies dated September 2012, our submission was dated November 23rd, 2012, found in Appendix A of PD 00513, and the proposed amendment to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe 2006, dated February 2013, as attached to the memorandum from the Director of Planning Services to the Mayor and members of Council, dated January 30th, 2013, and distributed separately at the February 4th, 2013 Planning and Development Council meeting be endorsed.
Thank you very much.
I'd be
Now,
happy to answer any questions.
I'll look for questions for you. Councillor Elgar, then Councillor Adams, and any others that may arise.
I'd just like, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for all the work that the planning staff has done on this, all these different documents. First question would be, going forward, could we include Conservation Halton planning staff when we do submissions of this type? I know we mentioned it at Planning and Public Works at the region last Wednesday, and I think they were looking at it. And I just wonder whether staff has any issues with doing that.
Through your worship to Councillor Elgar, in fact, that issue did come up at an area directors meeting, and I understand there has been discussion with the inclusion of Conservation Halton as part of this process, although they do provide separate comments depending on the issues, but certainly at least participation in knowing what the area municipalities are providing in terms of comments and vice versa. So while they might not become a formal part of HAP, they certainly would be included in some of the provincial review initiatives.
Okay, I would appreciate that. I realize Oakville doesn't have a Niagara escarpment in Oakville proper, but I think that actually the region could learn a lot from different things that are done by the Niagara escarpment staff also. So that's good to hear. I see the new recommendation. Would you think it would be appropriate, and would also be a good thing, to that council also request that the mayor on behalf of council write a letter thanking the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for, in fact, listening to the letter that was written to the minister on January the 8th regarding the Glenorchy lands being brought into actually the River Valley system, so that the most restrictive policies do in fact apply, which is what we had in our resolution.
Through your worship, I'm sure it couldn't hurt if you think that would assist it.
I would like to also, if we could put that in the recommendation.
Okay.
And I really think you did an excellent job on the provincial planning initiatives where you really hammer out growth-related infrastructure costs. I'd like to thank you for putting that in. I think you've done an excellent job because there's a lot of coin involved in this, and you know, to throw out, here's the numbers you're going to take without getting funding from the province is absolutely wrong. So thank you for doing that and being so strong on it.
and I think you've done an excellent job on these reports. And the timelines have been extremely tight, I realize.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much for the last-minute addition, the report that you've brought forward tonight. I think it's an excellent report. Councillor Elgar has gone through a little bit of it, but I'd like to try and highlight a couple of things. And so to do that, can I get you to give us a little bit of a 101 on how the population figures got added, the updated population figures got created and added to the new schedule?
Through your worship, to Councillor Adams. So there was a technical review completed by Hempson Consulting for the province, and they updated the numbers through a very technical analysis. Our concern with the numbers that were added is that we're not sure, because the policies haven't been changed, we're not sure how impacted we are. But it did go through quite an extensive technical review, but just on the numbers.
Thank you. And so your report outlines some of the difficulties in generating those figures, including lack of available underlying data for it. And the other missing piece from this discussion is what the impact will be to the local municipalities, particularly in Oakville, in our case. And that's not available and not obvious to the reader either. And Councillor Elgar has already brought forward the issue of the impact of the growth on the infrastructure needs and the costs associated with it. And he was alluding to the hard infrastructure, the roads and the transportation, all the wastewater systems, some of the soft infrastructure that's required, the administration space, all those things that have to get physically built. He left out, I think, schools in particular, hospitals, and healthcare systems. He didn't mention the costs associated with OMB appeals to the growth plans. So there's a whole bunch of things that are all in this letter. And I wanted to highlight them publicly so that people understand what all those costs are and why we don't like what we're seeing. And so if the mayor is writing a letter, he might want to also be adding a few of these comments in to highlight them. I know that we're working on a similar effort at the region, and having a similar effort from the local municipality can't hurt. So I wondered if we could consider such a thing as well, Your Worship.
I think maybe we'll have two letters. You should never put cudgeling in a thank you note.
Oh, I agree. So you can send the thank you to butter him up first, and then you can send the second letter if you'd like. But I would like to add to the motion, if Councillor Elgar is asking for a thank you letter, to also ask for the other letter to support the endorsed position of council.
The technical term is the cudgel letter?
The cudgel letter, that's right.
Right.
So first of all, thank you to our staff who have been working on our behalf here for working so well with the other planning departments around the region of Halton.
Ms. Childs, do you want to flip back to a slide, I think? Go back.
Right. On which?
Wait, I think that's the one I want. This one.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So these are the points, especially the last three that you want me to. Those are the bells you'd like rung, right?
These are the bells that I think need to be rung around the concern over the population figures and the related costs and other issues that are outlined in the report. Okay. So I have always had great concern over the growth in the population that's being added to us, forced upon us, and these are all reasons for supporting that concern.
So as chair of the Planning and Public Works Committee at the Region of Halton, I don't have to tell you, but the public may very well like to know that the answer to the question you floated about how the population gets distributed inside Halton, that's a decision made by the council and the staff of the Region of Halton. So, and in fact, you'll be on the front lines of that in your committee with Councillor Elgar. And given the recent public discussion about our neighbor to the west, from our neighbor to the west, about how much they miss having growth, we could maybe offer all of the new numbers to them.
I'd be glad to allow Burlington to have that extra intensification.
There you go.
I know they're interested.
It's win-win-win. Everybody gets their problem solved. All right, so, Madam Clerk, do we have a mover for the motion yet, or just suggestions for changes? Are there members of the public with information for council on this item? Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Elgar.
Your Worship, I'd be glad to move the motion. I'm just thinking with what Councillor Adams saying with his letter, you could almost just send this report, which is detailed enough that should go to, like staff has prepared, it's going on to the minister, but send it also to the minister himself, because it highlights everything that is of concern, which staff did a fine job on. So rather than you trying to pick out a few little things which are general, I'd say fire the whole thing off.
All right.
I'd ask that.
We will certainly do that. Councillor Adams?
I fully agree. My hope is that the letter will support the comments that are in our staff report. They're certainly the right comments. My intention, though, is to make sure it gets to the political level and not just within the bureaucracy.
We'll write the very best letter we know how.
And I know you can write a good letter.
Maybe we should copy the MPPs and
the world, all the parties, the media.
Yes, it should go to all the parties,
MPPs,
to the MPPs as well.
AMO.
Yeah.
It'll go to everybody.
Okay.
So Councillor Elgar has moved the motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. I'd have another roll call vote, but I'm tired now. All right, Council, that brings us to the bottom of the hour and the item number 6 on your agenda, the Livable Oakville Plan Implementation Report from Planning Services. And Ms. Childs is up again.
It's me.
We're all equal.
It's item 6 in your agenda this evening, and it's found on page 243. Again, I think this is a good news story, and you'll see how much work we've done with respect to implementing the policies in Livable Oakville. And that's the purpose, is to let you know the work, our implementation work, either completed or initiated to date. The Livable Oakville Plan commits the town to several policy implementation initiatives that we have broken down into a number of categories in the report. I'll try to be very brief. With respect to conformity exercises, an example would be the zoning bylaw review, or in-zone project, as we like to refer to it. Under the Planning Act, as we know, the town is required to update their zoning bylaw to conform to a new official plan within 3 years of a new OP coming into effect. A number of staff members are working on the in-zone project with anticipation of the first draft being released for public input and consultation in the spring. With respect to policy reviews, I would like to draw your attention to we completed a very comprehensive land use study for places of worship back in 2011. This study also provided direction on what we should be considering through the zoning bylaw review project. There are a number of special policy area initiatives that we are required to complete. Potential residential redevelopment areas, corridor studies, and other areas that require further study that are all identified in the plan. Attached as part of this report in front of you tonight is a terms of reference for the Trafalgar Corridor Study. This study consists of the lands both on the east and west side of Trafalgar Road, from Dundas Street to the QEW. There are a number of studies, too many to mention, that need to be completed, that are underway or initiated or about to be initiated with respect to implementing the policies of our 6 growth areas, with special note to Midtown Oakville. With respect to transportation considerations, the Transportation Master Plan, titled Switching Gears, was an update to the existing master plan and was approved in principle by Council in July 2012. Excuse me, got the Kirks for a sec. There are a number of heritage considerations identified in the Livable Oakville Plan that heritage staff have been working on, and Scott, I think, is going to update you on their future plans later this evening. Urban design staff is working hard to develop an urban design manual for the town, commonly referred to as Livable by Design. With respect to environmental considerations, similar to North Oakville, we're developing a sustainability checklist that we actually would like to apply it town-wide, but there'll be a chapter to deal with with North Oakville, and we're using that to get a lot of direction from. Finally, there are a number of administrative considerations that are identified in the Livable Oakville plan that staff have been working on. Just to give an example, to improve the quality and consistency of the materials that are submitted as part of the development application process, staff developed a number of terms of reference documents for the studies and/or supporting materials that we may require as part of the complete planning application process. So to conclude, I think I can say that the implementation of the Livable Oakville plan is well underway. Staff will continue to update council on the progress of all the initiatives that we're working on. And thank you. That ends my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Page 245, you mention special policy areas. And in there, it talks about the Spears Road corridor study. If I'm not mistaken, Councillor DeMoff, or Councillor Duddeck, we're interchangeable, had asked for a study on Spears Road. Is that something separate from this corridor study?
Through your worship, it's the same study. It's in our work plan. It's mentioned in the policies of Livable Oakville that we will complete a corridor study for Spears Road. It just hasn't been initiated yet. Trafalgar Road's first, out of the gate.
Thank you very much. It's very impressive, and it's wonderful to see Livable Oakville rolling out. And well done to everyone involved. Council really appreciates it. The chair looks for a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Johnston, all in favor? Opposed? No, I can tell there isn't. Thank you. That carries. Mr. Hanna, council is all ears. We're looking forward to item number 7, the Heritage Planning Work Plan Update.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and members of council. Again, I'm pleased this evening to bring you an update on the 3-year work plan. It builds on the work plan that was received last year at this same time. And it also reflects input from Heritage Planning staff and has the full endorsement now of Heritage Oakville. The presentation will be brief. It'll just mention again the areas of focus that we're looking at in Heritage Planning, talk briefly about our 2012 accomplishments, and looking ahead to the next 3 years with an emphasis on the 2013 priorities. Again, it's a 4-pronged approach to the areas of focus. First one being identify and protecting heritage resources. These are the day-to-day things that we do internally, looking at heritage permits and identifying individual properties to designate, etc. Second area is streamlining policy and procedures. The one I would mention this year was we had the first year of delegation, which you'll see, which was a tremendous success, and that came out of the policy and procedures area. Undertaking studies and reports related to heritage, and that a good example would be the downtown district, and promoting heritage conservation through outreach and education. We had a very good session with the real estate board this year that we've received some kudos for. So it's fair to say that our 2012 accomplishments, we've had a good year. We updated the Heritage Register this year, adding 49 properties to the register. It was the first full year of Heritage delegation. We had 34 Heritage delegated permits and very positive customer feedback. And in fact, Carolyn, who's here this evening, also received the EMT Significant Achievement Award for that particular initiative, which was a great award to receive. We've made significant progress on the Downtown Heritage Conservation District study. I should add we have now endorsed that study, which is fantastic.
Pretty significant.
Yeah, and we had the follow-up report on the Bronte Heritage Resources strategy. Other ones to mention, but certainly not a complete list. The Amanda 5 upgrade is a software program that we use internally to manage our permits and things, and we just recently went live with that in 2013, so that's fantastic. Again, I mentioned the real estate board seminar, and we also resolved the Lynbrook appeal, which was outstanding. Looking ahead, the goal was to complete the Downtown Heritage Conservation District study this year. We've already achieved that goal, Mr. Mayor. We'll be coming back to you with a report on heritage incentives. building on a presentation that Kirk gave you this evening with the CIP and the facade improvements. We are also going to look at adopting the Parks Canada's standard and guidelines. It's something that Council may want to consider adopting to assist with, for example, Part 4 designated properties where there are older bylaws which really don't provide a lot of guidance when it's talking about how to preserve those resources. We are going to do a further evaluation of the Heritage Register this year, and I should mention that won't be an addition, but it'll be more of a cleanse. So we're going to go through a process with Heritage Oakville to look at perhaps properties to remove from the register that are borderline and focus on the ones that really count. We're going to come forward back with a cultural heritage landscape strategy and a report to you on heritage inspections. And if time permits, and again, it's all about staff resources, we may try to reinstate the plaque program, look at district energy or entry signage for some of our districts, and hopefully initiate an update to the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District, so there may be a capital funding request there if we get that far. And obviously the day-to-day permit and plan review activities. So, Mr. Mayor and members of council, we're simply asking you to receive the report this evening, and if you have any questions, I'd certainly be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. It's very impressive to see how much you have on your plate. Good eating. Council, are there questions? All right, I'll take a motion. Councillor Duddeck, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And the material is received. Thank you, Mr. Hanna. That brings us to our advisory committee minutes, Council. And if you go to your addendum, is Carolyn here? Good. A little matter.
That's right. I'll just do a brief presentation. It's similar to the one that I did to the Heritage Oakville Committee. And I know our clerk staff also has available for you right now, if you're interested, the original staff report that was taken to Heritage Oakville on January 22nd. And that includes the staff recommendation, which I'll also show in the presentation. So the property is 72nd Street, and there was a heritage permit application that was received. The first part was to replace 18 existing wood casement windows in the house, as well as 7 wood transom windows above those casement windows. And the second portion was to restore 4 existing wood windows and add new wood storm windows to those 4. So it's just a front view of the house facing 2nd Street. So you can see in the circles, those areas are the casement windows proposed to be replaced, and these ones in the attics will actually just be restored as is. On the north elevation, again, more casement windows and transom windows to be replaced. And this is just a close-up view as the house looks now. And what you can see is the casement windows in the bottom here and the transom windows above. And in looking at the property, we've realized that there were no storms originally on the building when it was built. So the problem with adding storms now as a solution to retaining the existing heritage windows to provide more energy efficiency. The problem with adding those storm windows is that there isn't really a place for them in the existing frame. What you have here is some existing historic trim which would have to be changed or removed to allow for new storm windows. The other issue that staff had with that is that the look of the heritage windows as they are today, as you see them in this photo, that is the original heritage look of the building, and to add storm windows would detract from that look. So that's why staff actually concurred with the owners that replacing the existing wood windows here with new wood windows to match the look of these casement windows and the transom windows while retaining the original historic trim would actually be a better solution. And then this just shows 2 of the other windows which will actually be restored and with new wood storm windows put on. And again, this is a different case because as you can see here, this is not a casement window and there's no original large trim between, so it's a lot easier to actually install a wood storm window on the exterior of that window. So that's why the owners have applied for that. So in reviewing the district plan, this is the main portion of the plan that we looked at in terms of windows. It does say the rehabilitation and conservation of original windows is encouraged, and replacement of original windows should be consistent with other windows found in the building. It includes features such as pattern and paint arrangement, frame and trim material, opening mechanism, and the trim found in the window. New windows are encouraged when the original cannot be rehabilitated. So when staff reviewed this, we saw that in this case, adding storms would actually change the heritage look of the building and would require replacement of the historic trim, which we actually want to see retained. And replacing them with new windows to match the original windows would actually be a better solution as it maintains the heritage look and the trim. And the proposed windows are all wood and do meet the requirements of the district plan. So staff's original recommendation is above you there. That's basically just to approve the application, which was to replace 18 of those windows with new wood windows and to restore 4 of the windows. And it was just subject to some additional drawings being provided about the wood storm windows there as well. So that's staff's recommendation. Heritage Oakville recommendation was to deny the proposal, and we're just presenting you with those 2 recommendations before you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And was that a split vote, a tie vote at the Heritage Committee?
I believe it was 6-4 for a motion that was put before by one of the committee members to deny the application.
Okay. Councillor Duddeck.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I'm sorry I couldn't be in attendance at that meeting, so I guess my question is, can you provide some indication? I'm somewhat puzzled by the fact that our district plan refers to encourage. It doesn't say you have to have it. It encourages it. And then we also have the final paragraph stating new windows are encouraged when the original cannot be rehabilitated. So I'm sort of puzzled as to what the rationale was for the committee, and I don't know whether my colleague can maybe expand on that, where they were struggling with the fact that obviously the applicant had demonstrated they had gone to considerable lengths to try to do what we had given them in terms of encouragement, but obviously that was not feasible. So I'm kind of puzzled why committee was so torn on it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Duddeck, I think a lot of the committee members want to see more research and looking into more solutions as to how they could solve the problem. For us as staff, we felt that the owners had done sufficient research as to how they could maintain the existing windows or not maintain and get wood storm windows, or not put wood storm windows on and just keep the existing windows, or replace them entirely and maintain the trim. So I think some committee members may have felt that there could have been other solutions looked at, and staff felt that that was sufficient.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, and thank you for your explanation to Councillor Duddeck. The proposed windows that the homeowner came forward with, just as Councillor Duddeck wasn't at the meeting, are the proposed windows sympathetic, which is what one of the concerns is in the guidelines?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Giddings, absolutely. They are consistent with the windows that were actually approved for the rear addition on the house. So these windows have already been approved on this exact house, and similar windows have been approved within the district elsewhere, and staff's certainly supportive. They are all wood windows with simulated divided lights made to look like the windows that are being taken out. So staff is absolutely supportive of those types of designs for the windows.
Thank you for that. Question for you on page 38 of your report. It states that new windows are encouraged when the originals cannot be rehabilitated. If you could help, I'm just curious what the other option would be. If the old windows can't be rehabilitated, what other option is there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Giddings, again, it's really restoration or replacement, and as the guidelines say, when they can't be rehabilitated, really replacement windows are the other solution. And we really do like to see as much as possible that windows be restored, and in certain cases it can't be done. So again, in accordance with the guidelines, replacement windows are an alternative solution.
Which comes into, in the Act, it's encouraged, but in this case, and I take it there are other homes in the district that have had new windows matching the original installed?
Yes, that's correct. Again, we do look at it on a case-by-case basis and look at the district plan to ensure that as much as possible, all alterations are in accordance with the district plan, but there are certain cases within this district and others where windows have been replaced, as long as the new windows are in keeping with the house in the district.
Councillor Duddeck?
Are you finished, Councillor Giddings? Sorry. Just to confirm, they're wood, are they not? So that we're not even trying to deal with a composite of any kind to mimic the real thing, because I know quite often the committee is quite anxious to see wood being used as it's a much more, what shall I say, the original use on a heritage home. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gee, is there anybody, is the applicant here, do you know?
Are there any members of the public here with information for council on this item? Would you like to come and share your information? Welcome. Please identify yourself for the clerk.
My name is Daniel Turkstra. I'm the owner of 72nd Street with my wife. I did not speak at the Heritage Committee. I didn't think it was necessary because what we had applied for was within the guidelines. There was a lot of conversation to add to what's been said regarding storm windows and what is an original window and what's not an original window. We had originally planned when we initially submitted to the Heritage Committee that we put storm windows, restore the storm windows on the house. It wasn't until I brought in some heritage experts that we decided that it wasn't the way it originally was. So the windows, in order to fit the windows with storm windows, in order to fit the windows with storm windows, the existing windows would have to be modified. So we would effectively be burying the historic part of the house with a fraudulent new part of the house. So the heritage person basically said, the best option is to replace the windows. But when I heard the conversation that was going around the tables, it seemed like it was all positive, and then like one person suggested that I was too lazy to change storm windows, but that wasn't the case, and I didn't refute it or anything like that. But then I was actually shocked by the vote. So.
Thank you very much for your information. You might not be the only one who was shocked by the outcome. Councillor Bird?
How long have you been working on this house? Because the comments were that these are similar to the windows that you placed on the rear of the house. So is this...
They're exact same size and everything.
Okay, so the same supplier and everything else. So these will be compatible. When did you put the ones on the rear of the house?
November?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, or this year?
No, this year.
This year. So when you applied for those, you thought to get a quote on replacing all the windows with a similar style would be, if you will, kind of a no-brainer? Is that?
Well, we were initially planning on restoring the old windows to what we thought was restoration, so that wasn't even considered. It wasn't until we accidentally knocked a couple holes in the wall and noticed there was no insulation that we ripped the insulation off. And then when I brought in the heritage experts to find out how to put the storm windows on, it started by, I asked a couple storm window manufacturers to sell me some windows and what would it cost. And they said, we can sell you the windows, but they can't go on these on the windows. You'll have to get them modified. So that's when I went to the heritage experts. That's when I found out it was going to cost approximately $15,000 on top of the cost of new windows to restore the old ones and put storms on.
So there wasn't the same issues when you got approval from the same committee for the rear windows, is that correct?
No, there was no issues with the windows. So we lifted up the house 16 inches, and that was the only thing that one of the members of the committee voted against. But other than that, we had, they supported.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move we allow the gentleman to complete the project as recommended by staff.
And would you include in your motion, as a kindness to the rest of us, the approval of the other items and receipt of the rest?
I'll include that in the motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duddeck?
So I understand procedurally, do we not have to defeat first what was voted on previously, the denial at the committee level? No? It was just a recommendation. Thank you.
So the motion is to the following recommendation pertaining to item 5B be approved, and the remainder of the minutes be received, and the staff recommendation, the original staff recommendation on 5C be adopted. Have I got it?
Yeah, if I can speak to that, I know normally the committee, we really support the Heritage Committee's recommendation, but I can't see why we would have two recommendations on the same building for basically different window treatments. All the decision was made, as I see, that we're quite satisfactory to the committee for the windows on the part of the house, and I just asking that I think the die was cast. We should allow the gentleman to complete the rest of the project with the same windows for the reasons as presented by staff, and they are wood windows, and I think it is in conformity with the guidelines.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Let's see how many agree with you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Look at that. Everybody agrees with you. All right, that brings us to, I believe, the need to rise and report to council. Can we have a motion to rise and report? Councillor Lapworth, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on confidential consent items C1 and C2, public hearing items 1 and 2, discussion items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and advisory committee minutes, item 8, as noted by the clerk. I need a mover and seconder for this report, please. Councillor Duddeck and Councillor Giddings, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The report is adopted. Council, is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Thank you. Is there a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor Johnston, Councillor Knoll, thank you. This is authority for bylaw 2013-4 and 14, the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council. All those in favor? Any opposed? The bylaws are adopted. That completes our agenda. It's been great working with you. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and we are adjourned.